being British, or being in the context of continental Europe, being European, French, German, whatever it is, has to begin with a feeling. It has to start there, yeah? Because home is a feeling. And where you feel at home is going to be your home, right? Now, I was born and raised here in Essex, and love Essex. I left home at 16, and all my schoolmates, still in touch with all of them. And it's easy for me to feel at home in Britain. It's easy. I was born and raised here, right? But I wasn't born and raised in one of these insular communities. Especially in those days, I had the opposite problem. I was facing neo-Nazi skinheads. Because in those days in Southend, on Sea, in Essex, you could count the number of people that looked like me on one hand, right? Maybe this places me in a very interesting and unique position to address this question. But those that were born in, say, the insular communities of, say, in Bradford or certain towns and cities across the country, whatever, Rochdale, Rotherham, there is a challenge. Do they really, really feel at home in this country? Now, this is a two-way street, but it has to begin with that feeling, right?
Mm.
And that feeling, we can help it emerge through conversation and debate like this, right? To the contrary of what they fear, they meaning those that want to shut this conversation down across the political spectrum, not just Muslims, Labour, others as well, some kind of Tories in name only, whatever. Those who want to shut this conversation down, contrary to what they fear, the conversation and the debate helps build that feeling of home. Because afterwards, even if you had somebody you vehemently disagreed with over the course of this conversation across the table, and they left and you gave them a fair hearing and a civic disagreement, they'd leave thinking, that's interesting. You know, he let me speak, even if he disagreed with me. And then he challenged me, but politely, yeah? And that all part of that, it helps build the feeling that this is, like, for example, the debate culture we have in this country, Oxford debates or whatever. I know you participated in those debates.
And you did recently as well.
Mine was Islam. I opposed the motion that Islam is incompatible with democracy for these very points we're discussing here today. If we can somehow address the feeling question, everything else builds from there. Then what do we need to do, right? Beyond that, of course, there are a whole host of parameters that will have certain red lines as to what it means to be part and parcel of Britain. The red lines, of course, will involve you can't feel like you belong to this country if you're running around parasiting on its underage children, right? And the rest of the community, Muslim, British Pakistani Muslim community, feels, by the way, the same about this in private. They do not endorse. The majority do not endorse this behavior. What you're witnessing is a defensiveness in public, or asabiya, the phrase I use, this aggressive tribal defensiveness, because they don't feel the same as the rest of the country. They're worried the rest of the country is going to view them as different, and it's creating this oppositional dialectic. But in private, the overwhelming majority not only reject these underage rape gangs, but would endorse the application of the verse of Hiraba that we discussed earlier onto them.
So my concern with this idea that is actually that they do, and I do believe someone like Dillu Hussein believes that he is, he does have the feeling that this is his home.
Yeah.
But what I've picked up by following him on Twitter is that his concept of what that is different to ours. So he very much would feel like this. He's British, and I've heard him say things like Britain is secular. I don't think that's true. Britain's a Christian country.
It's not secular, and also I question the feeling. I question it. I know the former HT lot, Hizb ut-Tahrir. I question it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So well, despite that, can we talk conceptually about what it is to be British? It can't be just to have a feeling that this plot of land is home. There's got to be some, for example, someone who's been on the show is Catherine Burblesing. She's got a brilliant, I think it's majority Muslim actually, but her school out in Wembley, and she's united the best in the country. Yeah. She's united all these different communities through the flag, albeit a Christian flag, the Union flag. It's 3 crosses on top of each other, by singing the national anthem. And I guess the monarchy. And I go further in saying that to be British is to be a participation in the heritage of Britain, which I think is an open invitation if you come to this country.
I'd go further. If you don't accept the traditions and culture of this country, you're engaged in subversion against this country, right? Britain is not a secular country. And in a sense, it shouldn't be either. And what I mean by that is we have an established church, and the monarch is the head of the Church of England. Now, everything's gone wrong with that. Everything, as you know, right? Everything that could possibly go wrong with that.
That's a whole other scandal, a whole other episode.
Yeah, now I'm not just talking about Justin Welby. I'm also talking about King Charles' relation with Jimmy Savile. Everything's gone wrong with it from the top down, yeah? But that doesn't mean that the institutions themselves shouldn't be there anymore. That's a leap. And I think it's a leap too far, because radical change, and I've been a lifelong small R Republican, by the way, but I'm pragmatic on. I said it on LBC.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I'm no. I said it on LBC. I'm completely pragmatic on that. I don't think it's a good idea to remove any of this. Right. What I mean is, like, in the context of America, it might work. I don't think it would work here in Britain. I don't think it would work to remove all of this. I think we've got to be very careful. Why am I saying that? Because what we've noticed is when you remove the moral compass of a nation that's meant to be like the spiritual guidance of that nation, you end up with a black hole, a void, and a yearning for spirituality, which is filled by materialism. And we've seen that with consumerist culture. Consumerism has overtaken spirituality for most people's preoccupation. And that's a terrible indictment on a post-spiritual society. And people often say in our US podcast friends and that world, people often say, as you would have heard as well, that culture is downstream from politics, right? And what they mean by that is, politics is downstream from culture,
yeah,
right?
Right back.
Yeah. What they mean by that is that you can't fix politics until you fix culture. And I add often one extra layer to that and say, well, correct, you can't fix politics until you fix culture, but you can't fix culture until you fix spirituality. Because if you remove spirituality, your culture ends up becoming this hollow, consumerist, empty black hole. And so the rise of online sex culture, pornography, substance addiction, materialism, shallow-minded short-termism, all of this is a result of consumerism. And it can only be fixed by spirituality. And it's why, for example, I think it was it who was it who said it? Was it Freud who said don't quote me on this, but that even if the belief in God is wrong, it's useful. But actually,
Jung, I think.
Was it Jung? It was Jung. That's right. But actually, for me, I believe, right? But that's another topic again, not for the topic of this podcast. But whether you believe or you don't believe, to recognize it's useful is quite clear. I think Tom Holland would agree with that, right? It's useful, yeah. And what we've done is we've tried to destroy the thing, but the consequences of destroying it, you can see in society. And it's very, very, so when people like Dilly or others, let's not just make it about him, say this is a secular country, what they're really trying to do is to say, get your, let's tear down the fabric of this society. This is a political struggle against the traditions and the culture of this country. And I do not think that's helpful. We need to be able to uplift the spiritual traditions of this society, not tear them down. And that's why I think Catherine School's doing well. And I'd say to fellow British Muslims that just as the official established religion in Pakistan is Islam and should remain Islam, just as the official established religion in the new Syria will be Islam and should be Islam, the official established religion in Britain is Christianity. And there should be an official established religion in Britain. And it's not going to be Islam and it's not going to be Judaism. So leave the thing alone.
Yeah.
There needs to be a religion here, right? Because if you remove spirituality from the people, you're going to see the kind of society that Prophet Muhammad came to correct. There's a reason in the Quran it says, فَبِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. For what crime was that baby girl killed? They used to bury their daughters alive in the sand, right? For what crime was she killed? And today we've got these very, very early abortions. We've got medical experiments on children. We've got forced vaccines. The same thing's coming back around again. This worship of material progress at the expense of the human soul. And COVID was the case in point for that. That's what happens if you remove spirituality from society.
Yeah. Or as Nietzsche said, we've killed God and you'll never be able to clean up the blood.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching this clip from The Winston Marshall Show. You can click here to watch the full episode, and for more clips like this one, don't forget to subscribe. And as always, be well.